Hello and welcome to the First Issue Club. We are your weekly comic book podcast where, just like Sue Storm, we love a good read. Reading. It should be a virtue, shouldn't it? When you think about the list of virtues, what are they? I'm going to Google this right now.
List of virtues.
I can down with you guys.
I can think of a few.
Can you?
Yeah. One virtue is returning your shopping cart after you return your groceries to your car.
That's a great one.
Another virtue is to hold the elevator if someone's running towards it.
One of my favorite virtues, holding an elevator.
Third one is to call every dog you see on the sidewalk a good boy or girl.
Mm-hmm. How do you know? You just guess based on vibe.
They'll either be wearing a bow or not a bow, if I've learned anything from Disney movies.
Yeah, that's right.
A bow in the hair is a great indicator of which gender you identify with.
And I think reading fits right in with those, right?
Yeah.
It's a self-betterment thing.
Mm-hmm.
Good boy, go home and read. You're getting into heaven. You're so virtuous.
All dogs go to the library, if not heaven.
We're not talking about dogs reading.
I'm the good boy?
Don't try to twist my words.
Okay.
There are some virtues I think that you don't have, Greg.
The ability to pay attention.
That's right. Cooperation. Not a Greg virtue.
Are these seriously virtues that you're reading right now?
There's a list that's much longer than I expected. When I Googled this, I expected to see these are the 4 virtues.
Yeah.
Decided by who, I don't know.
Be kind and rewind.
But acceptance, assertiveness, these are in alphabetical order. Authenticity, beauty. I didn't expect beauty to be on the virtues list.
Yeah, wow. Talk about shallow.
Let's see. The qualities in a person or a thing that give pleasure to the senses or mind.
Like a comic book.
Yeah, that's the perfect comp for a comic book. Aren't they beautiful?
Mm-hmm. They bring me joy.
So if you want to learn more about virtues, go to virtuesforlife.com/virtues list.
And first of all, we do not endorse that site in any way. I don't know what it is or who wrote it. The fact that we just gave the URL is bewildering. Enter at your own risk.
Yeah. Okay. This is a comic book podcast, which you might not have caught on to yet. We've been doing it for something like 8 years, and this is the sharpened, honed tool that it's become after all that time. Can you believe it?
It takes us 3 minutes to get into it.
Yeah, we're really humming along here. What we do is we talk about some comic book news, let you know what's going on in the hobby, give our takes on it. And then we're going to talk about first issues, the most accessible issues.
That's right.
Into a new series, a new adventure, a new storyline. Again, reading. Got to do it if you're going to be a good person.
Ain't it great? Reading. Woo-wee.
The first issues that I read were Violent Flowers, out on Image by Maria Lovett. The Manchurian, out on Image by Pornsak P. Chetshot. And Knights vs. Samurai by David Desmalchian. And then what were the books that you read, Greg?
So I read The Missionary from Distillery by Ryan Stegman and Jason Howard. I also read Turtles of Grayskull by Tim Seeley and Freddie E. Williams II. And then I also snuck in The Lobo Cancellation Special by Kyle Starks and Kyle Potts.
We've got a lot of options for you, independent and otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll find something that you like while we're talking through these comics.
A veritable feast of firsties, if you will.
All right, but before we get to that, I want to talk about one of my favorite beverages in the whole entire world. That's Boulevard's Space Camper Cosmic IPA. What a beautiful bouquet of hops that get rested upon my palate. And I swish it around in there and I say, ooh, 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 never leave me. Stay home in my mouth.
A delectable floral arrangement that will send your taste buds to the moon and beyond.
That's right. Your new
Space
favorite
Camper Cosmic IPA. Not a beer,
IPA.
It's a journey.
It's a journey into space.
We will be having Adam Hall on the show in a couple weeks to talk about a new entry into the Space Camper line. So we're excited to do that. Not only is Adam Hall a great beer nerd and comic book nerd, he's also an amazing friend. So
Aw.
we're excited to have him on the show.
Yep. Friendship, one of my favorite virtues.
God, you and your fucking virtues.
I'm very virtuous. What can I say? Let's talk some comic book news.
Yep.
If you're a Spider-Man fan, who isn't, right?
Yeah.
One of the biggest ones. Superman, Batman, Spider-Man. He's maybe third. Do you think Spider-Man at this
notoriety?
point is bigger? Yeah, bigger than Superman? No.
Well, hold on.
I say he's third.
What's the criteria? I see more kids pretending to be Spider-Man than I see pretending to be Superman.
The criteria is current cultural awareness.
Well, I mean, okay, so Spider-Man wasn't in every episode of Seinfeld. I'll give you that. Because Superman was. But fuck, yeah. I mean,
who's more recognizable, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Superman.
I think Superman.
Yeah, it's Superman.
All right, number 3 with a bullet. Spider-Man. So we got some Spider-Man news. Today we got a new look at a Spider-Girl that's being introduced in Spider-Boy 12. If you didn't know, there's a new Spider-Boy who's a younger member of the Spider family, and has his own rogues gallery, and it's been a fun little series to follow so far, and it has broken past its first arc and is getting into new stuff. You see Spider-Boy kind of teaming up with Daredevil. I think he's going to kind of tour around as a sidekick of many different characters instead of just Spider-Man. So
like a rotating Robin.
Yeah, the last series we got him alongside Captain America a decent amount, which was fun. And then this next time around, he's teaming up with Daredevil, and Spider-Girl pops in, and we saw some sample pages of that without text.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Spider-Boy, you said he has his own rogue gallery of villains already.
Yeah.
Are they also child themed? Or is he taking on full-grown adults?
Yeah, this is just like normal goofball villains.
Okay. I'll allow it.
So Spider-Girl in this is definitely a little girl.
Okay.
You could tell by like the height and stature, and she's got like pigtails. She's wearing like high-rise sweatpants.
Right.
A little more of like a DIY kind of outfit with like sneakers, but has the kind of traditional looking Spider-Man mask and Spider-Man eyes.
She's saying stuff like Riz God in Ohio.
Ohio is one I haven't heard yet. Is that a thing?
Yeah, it means bad.
Oh no, poor Ohio.
I know. Ohio can't catch a break, man.
Yeah.
Always catching a stray with pop culture.
So that's fun to see. You'll get like a counterpart for Spider-Boy that's around his age. You never know with like the boy and girl heroes that like Wonder Girl or like Supergirl is like a full-blown adult, right?
Sure, yeah.
Like these characters are actual boys and girls.
I'm sure she's talking to Clark, just like, can I get a promotion? Like, I've been Supergirl for almost 30 years now, and it's a little embarrassing.
Okay, so I don't know. Look out for that. It comes out in issue 12 of Spider-Boy, if I didn't mention it. So that's maybe one to pull if you like first appearances of quirky characters.
Yeah.
Marvel's new TVA comic is going to be coming out in a while, and they are apparently bringing Channing Tatum's Gambit into the comic book universe. Have you heard this? Did you see this?
I wish I hadn't heard it.
You wish you hadn't heard it, really.
The only reason that Channing Tatum Gambit works is in moving pictures because you can hear him. Why does it matter if he's in a comic book?
I think people love the memeability of this character, and he's a fun pop culture thing. And they'll probably do up the way they spell stuff and how people react to him in the comic, and it'll be fun. I'm ready to enjoy it.
Do we know who the creative team is?
A Grinch. No,
yeah.
I didn't write
Well, then
down.
color me green because my heart has shrank 10 times.
TVA comic Marvel.
I like the idea of what this comic can be, I'm worried that it's not going to go anywhere. Does that make sense? I know it's not going to be an ongoing. It can't be an ongoing. There's
No,
not
it's
that much material for the TVA.
it's 5 issues. It's
If they treat
by
this like damage control, then full steam ahead, folks.
it's Catherine Blair with art by Pere Perez.
Oh, okay.
The cover looks awesome. The cover is Pepe Larraz on the first issue, and it's
Okay.
got this like cubicle cube, and people are sticking out of it in like all kinds of directions. And there's like a Miss Minutes. There's the Lady Loki. I can't remember what her name was. Sophie. A couple of your TVA employees, different Minutes characters, which is intriguing. Because I don't think those were ever in the show, right?
Not that I
But
know of.
Miss Minutes has like other counterparts that are like other clock people.
Okay. Will we cover the first issue? You bet your ass we will.
Oh yeah, I think it's going to be really fun.
Okay.
I think the point is just to be like fun adjunct content for people who enjoy the TVA, like
I feel like we're the
other
yin and
MCU
yang.
universe stuff.
We're the yin and yang of this right now. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? We can't have too much joy. We need to have a little black cloud, and I will be that for this comic.
That's why it's fair, because I'm always the black cloud on like the
Yeah, you shit all over my Marvel apes.
IP property stuff. I never like the Planet of the Apes tie-ins, or like Godzilla is in a
Yeah.
Deadpool comic for some reason.
Or the JL apes, where all the Justice League members were apes.
Yeah.
Didn't like that. That was a banger.
So if you like the TVA, pick up this comic.
Be sure to get this first appearance.
That's the thing. You might as well, if you're a collector, I feel like you might as well, because we're getting the Minutes characters, and I don't know if Sophie, if I'm getting that right, has ever appeared in an actual Marvel comic before, or if this
That's
is
a
her
good
first
question.
appearance too.
And here's something else I will approve. If Channing Tatum's Gambit ever makes it to a cover of this series, you can actually have the actor sign the book, and it'd be totally fine.
Yeah. It always makes my like teeth grind when I see
Yeah.
a celebrity sign like a
Mark
classic
Ruffalo signs the first appearance of Hulk.
1960s book or something like that. Yeah, that just drives me nuts. I think I'd be like, you know what? No, I'm probably not going to sign that. I have
Get
too
this
much.
son of a bitch out of the convention
I have
now.
too much respect for what this is to like
As
put
you're
my,
ripping the comic book up in front
to
of the
put
person.
my name on it.
How dare you, sir?
But I don't blame people who don't have context for like comic books and the history and what the characters mean to just be like, sure, I'll write my name on this.
Yeah. Okay.
Revival issue 1 is heating up.
TV
And that's
show.
because the
TV
cast
show.
got set last week. So there's some casting news out there. So this thing feels even more real. It's going to happen, we think. So Revival was a really fun series. I know Greg loved it. This
did.
was a lot of people in the comic fandom. Their introduction to Jenny Frison, who is now like cover superstar.
Right.
So if you want some early Jenny Frison covers, pick up some Revival and try to get an idea for the comic before the show comes out. It should be fun. Buy these raw, I think. Slabbed copies. Someone sold a 9.8 of Revival 1 for $400.
Oh, come on, folks.
This past week, you can get the raw for like $10.
Use your head here. Come on.
Yeah. These should not be selling for that much money. This was like a popular Image comic. It's not a $400 comic book. So spend wisely. As I say with a smile. It's a great comic, but don't play yourself. Speaking of comics that are heating up, way more Knoll stuff. Kind of the last couple weeks since we've seen Knoll be announced as our villain in the next Tom Hardy Venom movie. All those like weird little tie-in books that have something to do with Knoll are going up in price this past week.
They're heating up.
So again, cautious spending on some of those things. Those will go back to being the price they were 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Also,
too long.
If you, where were you 2 years ago, folks, when like Noel was in his
Yeah, if you were that
peak,
big of a fan of Null,
you had
it wasn't like
plenty
it
of
was
time
like
to find these.
in the 80s and you missed it. Yeah. It's like
I
you
mean,
wait till
yeah.
now to be like, shit, I gotta buy that now.
you really slept on it. If you claim to be a Venom fan at all, you're just like, oh man, yeah, I just spent $400 on Noel's first appearance. You will be laughed out of the LCS,
That's a really
my
good
friend.
point. Okay, West Coast Avengers is coming out soon,
Yeah.
and they have shown the cover for one of the early issues, and it features Blue Bolt, who is a jerk henchman who is kind of on like a prison release program with the Avengers.
So like the
So
Guy Gardner.
yeah, I think this is. I always love West Coast Avengers stuff just because there's so much like looser and lower stakes and way more fun than
There's definitely some brevity to it all.
yeah,
And I think
yeah.
it's because they're in LA,
Yeah. They're all getting jobs in commercials and things like that.
Ubering at night to pay the bills.
So I'm excited for that. That just sounded like a fun character. I think Jerry Duggan is writing this. Does that sound right?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Um,
I'm right there with you. I love West Coast Avengers stuff. I think it's really fun, and it's like more of a lighthearted Avengers fare. There's
Yeah.
no like real serious
mhm,
villain for the West Coast Avengers, just like kind of other lackadaisy
mhm.
bad guys that are just like, oh fuck it, like I'm just gonna rob this taco stand because I'm bored.
And lastly, we would be remiss if we didn't discuss the Thunderbolts teaser.
Oh, the trailer?
Yes,
Did you watched it?
I did watch it.
The Pixies song was a perfect choice.
When I was so today, I was like, I need to rewatch this in case we talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I Googled Thunderbolts, and like the first result was Thunderbolts trailer song. Everyone's like, what is this song? It's kind of weird to hear it like orchestral new metal version. With
This
like
is a thing that trailers have done.
gunshots like playing alongside it. It's it's like
Caitlin and I have always said when people slow down songs
uh-huh.
that are normally a little more upbeat to make them more dramatic, it is the cringiest thing in the
Yeah.
world. Like
It is like a joyous song, and they make it so like slow and eerie and creepy. It's just
yeah,
kind of strange to hear in that context. And it's strange as like and kind of older guy now to be like, man, what would Frank Black then think watching something like this? Like, oh, our songs and in like a huge movie trailer, and it's
yeah.
being like remixed with bullet sounds.
Yuppies, fucking posers. I'm Frank Black.
There's almost no such
Yeah.
thing as selling out anymore, though.
Yes, there is.
Do what you want.
And I will sell out happily at a given moment. I love the trailer. Getting back to the point that we were talking about, I think
Yeah.
it looks really fun. People are comparing it to like this is going to be Marvel's Suicide Squad, and I agree. I think that's a great comp. And why not? Why shouldn't we get our own Suicide Squad?
Yeah.
I think the bigger story here is that the conversation has shifted to the asterisks at the end of the Thunderbolts lends itself to at the end of the movie they will be referred to as the Dark Avengers, which it's a very cool idea. I love the Sentry getting his due. I feel like that character is going to blow some minds.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't confirmed or anything, but it's like alluded to.
So there's a emblem or a belt buckle in the trailer.
Yep. It
which
looks
is
like
an S.
it like kind of has an S.
Yeah,
It's like barely an S.
If you look at the Marvel Knights Sentry,
It's the same logo.
it's damn near the same.
Okay.
And I think people have, and you know what? I mean, it's not fair to say this, but people have said it without saying it, which means nothing. But the fact that it could be anyone else is not a possibility in my mind. That is the Sentry. We will see an allegory for mental health in this character, which he is.
Well, that's the thing. When he pops up, he's kind of like a little disoriented and not quite sure why he is where he is.
Yeah.
That's mental illness is such a tough thing to like address in a movie like this, where like you really got to do it
Mm-hmm.
right and with care, and it's tough to like. Well, here's my other thing about it.
Yeah.
If you put Sentry in this, is he going to be the villain? Because on our movie poster, we've got who the Thunderbolts are,
Mm-hmm.
and you clearly see the lineup, and then you show the group in different like team briefings and mission planning, and he's never there with them. So he is either just like an adjunct character,
Mm-hmm.
or he's the bad guy, or he's the mission in this movie.
So
You know what I mean?
yeah, he is the mission. So
He is the mission.
my
Okay.
theory is
This is
that
again
these
theory.
yeah, this is the first issue club theory. These rogue members of the Thunderbolts have been brought in to be tested against Bob, air
Mhm.
quotes, Sentry.
Yeah.
I feel like the Sentry character is like being used as a puppet from like a shadow organization as like their personal superhero to protect them and to do what they want through a superhero.
Yeah.
They've found some way to either control him or use him at their discretion. So I
And
think they're going in to either be tested and killed to see if Bob can destroy these things and get stronger, and then they're going to figure that out and realize that they need to save this guy and get him out of there, kind of thing.
I've heard too that people are like, Sentry is too powerful of a character to mix right with a group of like more ragtag heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And to that, I might say, I think this possible Sentry character in this, if it is Bob from the trailer, is being presented in a way that he like doesn't necessarily have his shit together.
Right. Yeah.
And it could be
Exactly.
one of these things where he's just like very powerful, but very unmotivated and doesn't know necessarily like how to make the best of or how to use
Yeah.
these, like the power he does have at his disposal. So there's something interesting in like Superman with lethargy. You know what I mean?
Well, we also have to remember that sometimes he's not in control because the void takes over and he just kind of blanks out.
Yeah.
So we have like a duality thing here of like early on, the allegory for the Sentry was schizophrenia.
Hmm.
Because like if he becomes too enraged or too disoriented, the void will take over, which is like a color flip of who he is. He turns
Yeah.
like jet black and gets all weird looking, and he's the true evil. He's the evil character.
Yeah.
So you have the villain and the hero in the same body. And I feel like most of the movie is going to be Bob so disoriented because he doesn't know how to control this thing yet.
Hmm.
Because like a baby with a gun is also dangerous, but the baby doesn't know how to use the gun, so it's pretty easy to take control of it.
Yeah. And I know that Julie Louis-Dreyfus, her character has a line in the trailer that's something like, there's no such thing as good guys, there's just bad guys and worse guys.
Mm-hmm.
That also kind of lends itself to your theory of like, hey, yeah, I understand you guys have traditionally been above the law and are doing like, these are characters who have like murdered people, you know,
Oh
in
yeah, straight up.
in the continuity of like the movies. So they're not your traditional Captain America superhero types.
Mm-hmm.
However, in comparison to a potential threat like a Sentry,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, we got to do what we got to do.
Yeah,
You guys, in comparison, are
way better.
way better. Yeah, we'd rather you guys than the Sentry, than
And
one
it
Sentry.
could be that like I think her name's Valentina, like, and
Mhm.
she is like a comp to Lady Hydra. And
Yeah.
what the movie could be is they've lost control of Bob. This organization thought they could just take control of this superpowered person.
Yeah.
He's gone out of control. So they've called in the bootlegs to like hopefully contain this thing.
Hmm.
And so it's going to be, I hope it just takes place in one building, like Dread or,
Dread was so good.
like just, they have to like lock down this building because if this thing gets out, everyone's fucked. So if they could contain this movie to one building for the majority of the movie, that would be sick.
One building movies are great.
Yeah. You have Dread, What else?
Can you count the Alien movies? Because they take place
Oh
mostly
yeah,
in like a solo
Aliens,
location.
Die Hard.
Hmm. Can't think of a bad one.
What's the movie, the scary found footage movie where like they're trapped in a building?
A found footage movie where you're trapped in a building. Are you
Yeah,
thinking of
people
like
are.
Panic Room?
No, but that's one of them. People are screaming at me right now. It's not Strangers, but it's like Quarantine or something like
Oh,
that. It
I
doesn't matter.
hated Strangers.
Yeah, just because
Movie was
it was scary.
freaky. I mean,
Great
yeah,
movie,
I
scary as
guess
shit.
I hate it because it's good at what it's trying to do.
Which is
um,
make me sleep with the lights
yeah,
on.
one of the things that I read about this trailer was that Bucky was a congressman, and
Okay.
it was written like that was an obvious takeaway, and I was like, I I
I
don't
didn't
get
get
that
that.
at all. I mean, he wears a suit in like one scene, but like I didn't pick that up at all, and that sounds so corny to me that like,
Yeah.
you
I don't
know,
think Bucky would be a
congr-
congressman at all.
Congressional District 51, Bucky Barnes is congressman. Like
Hello, Bucky Barnes, councilman,
yeah,
just running like city hall meetings. All right, this meeting's about the
he's
jurisdiction for some piping off
just
of Jefferson.
head of an HOA somewhere in Washington
I think
D.C.
that's the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard. Bucky Barnes in politics. He's the least likely person to be in politics.
Yeah, right.
Just from his history and trauma.
Yeah. But this was on like I don't know, a popular enough news site to be like
Uh-huh.
first in my like listings of
Was it www.casualfan.com?
my favorite site on the internet. Well, I
Listen,
just told on myself.
I will eat a cake shaped like a hat if Bucky Barnes has any political role in the new
All right.
Thunderbolts movie.
So win-win
Timestamp it
either way.
right now. 31 minutes, 54 seconds. And I'll wash it down with a frothy Space Camper IPA from Boulevard Brewing Company.
A beer and cake. My favorite breakfast.
Yep, that's how I want to go out.
Anything else to say about this trailer? Any hopes and dreams for Thunderbolts?
I hope it's as cool as I think it's going to be.
I agree. This does look like something that is going to exist as a fun standalone movie that you don't need a ton of context for, even though the characters read as like a context heavy
Mm-hmm.
movie, because you've got like we talked about this a little bit over text or the Discord the other day, where I was like, you think if you told the person who played Ghost in Ant-Man 2 that they were going to be like a major part of a team that could be a new MCU franchise, they would have believed you when
Yeah.
Ant-Man 2 came out. Like that role was so small,
They would have hoped.
and now you're like the star of a massive movie.
Here's
So-
my prediction. If this movie pops off like I think it's going to pop off, this will be the Guardians of the Galaxy of the Marvel universe.
That's a good comp, and I think that's the way they're kind of treating it, where like you could have a movie that was like a backstory for Drax or Gamora, but you didn't need it. The way they introduced each of them, they were all just kind of like scoundrels. They got thrown together pretty quickly.
They say cuss words.
Yeah, there's that scene where they're like in a limo together, and Bucky's like hunting them down, and that just seems like fun. Guardians of the Galaxy, like, oh, how did all these miscreants end up in the same situation? And I just don't think it'll need a ton of what's the word for that?
Context. I just need a lot of action, quips, and explosions.
Yeah.
That's all I need from this movie. Maybe a person ripped in half. That's all. That's all I'm a simple man. That's all I'm asking for.
Have we seen the rating on it?
It's TBD.
Thunderbolts rating is TBD.
I'm assuming PG-13.
Thunderbolts won't be rated R according to rumors.
Okay, so PG-13, which means they'll get away with some mild cuss, maybe a butt cheek or two, and a lot of bullets.
It will move into a more mature direction than previous MCU projects and Disney Plus shows are also moving in that same more mature direction.
Yep. Well, I mean, we saw Catherine Hahn's butt.
So you can think of how, like, so they're kind of saying in this IMDb article that's written by like someone from some news outlet, they're comparing the newer PG-13 movies to what like TV MA is, which is
Gotcha.
kind of in my brain.
Like
When I
The
see
Wire.
PG-13, I think like a movie for teenagers. When I think TV MA, it's like, no, this is more a mature audience, but it's still on TV, so it's not going to be so graphic as to be R.
It's
Which
like
I get
Breaking Bad.
you can get away with in like 2024 under PG-13.
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting.
To say the least.
Let's talk about comic books.
Can I do my one tidbit of news?
I didn't know you had a tidbit. What a surprise.
Tiny little tidbit of news. We can chomp on it for a second and then throw it away.
Exposition was the word I was looking for earlier.
Oh, circle got the square. Recently, Mark Millar in a podcast spoke out, or I guess hinted at, that he is potentially coming back to Marvel to write a story that's bigger than his Civil War event that he did. And my response to that, I don't know if it's yours as well, but please no. Please keep Mark Millar away from Marvel and or DC. I don't need him writing characters that allegory as an answer to the woke mob or trans people in any kind of role in society. He is a bigot and a piece of garbage and hates fun things and progressiveness. And that is against everything that I think Marvel and DC stand for. So I hope someone in their right mind is listening and keeps Mark Millar the fuck away from Marvel and DC. Let him do his own Mark Millar world shit in his own Dark Horse arena and keep him the fuck over there. Thank you. Good night.
All right. I'll co-sign, sure.
All right. Boom.
More and more Marvel and DC are doing their, like, Pride covers and those like the Voices style comics. And
right. It's like if Bill Willingham got pinned to write a Wiccan comic. It's like, are we tone deaf here? What are we doing?
Yeah, some of that stuff would feel more disingenuous if you start having people who have said
it just doesn't make sense.
Cringeworthy stuff on podcasts taking the place of people who are bringing a more positive viewpoint to the world.
Yeah.
Who are, just as capable.
Also, to hear him, I don't have the article in front of me, but to hear him describe how successful his Civil War event was, he gave off very big Trump energy of just like, A Road to Civil War is the highest grossing graphic novel for Marvel, by the way, Civil War, which I wrote, kind of changed the landscape of comic books. And while reading this, I was just like, you fucking self-indulgent, smug prick. Like, you have officially entered angry old man territory. And like, what hot take can we take from Mark Millar that's going to eclipse his Civil War Marvel book? Probably nothing, probably, like, I don't want to see a book where Iron Man's just like, well, I remember when I used to call the movie theater to see what time the movie was playing. And it's just like, what the fuck? This is so stupid. This is so backwards of what we need to do. It made me so like antsy when I read that.
Yeah.
Whatever. Moving on. Let's talk about comic books. Let's make me happy again.
Yeah. Let's start with your palate cleanser of the Ninja Turtles and He-Man.
Oh, okay.
What was that book titled?
I think it was called Turtles of Grayskull. Okay. Let me pull it up real quick. Turtles of Grayskull by Tim Seeley and Freddie E. Williams II.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm not going to spend too terrible much time on this book because I've lived out this book. I've had Ninja Turtle toys. I've had He-Man toys. I've played in a sandbox before. I've done this. I've mashed these two things together.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Tim Seeley is doing in a fantastic way. Some of these crossover events can be very, very trite and tiresome. And, they're only here to sell covers. Thankfully, when you get the right creative team attached to these things, like if you put Tim Seeley or Freddie E. Williams in there, it's going to have a little bit of quality.
Yeah.
And Tim Seeley has already been writing this like He-Man across the multiverse storyline. So he's been doing He-Man stuff for a little bit. So he's familiar with all these characters. The gist of it is Krang and Shredder have been talking to Skeletor via the Technodrone.
Oh shit! Did you hear Krang and Skeletor were?
Dude, you hear that? Like Krang and Skeletor, like fucking totally Ohio right now, like trying to riz each other up. It's cringe. Wow, I aged 12 years when I did that. And there's some like weird Skeletor black magic involved. The turtles get sucked into the universe, and so they're trying to help the heroes of Eternia to reclaim, basically to like take care of their Skeletor problem and their Shredder problem to get the chocolate out of their peanut butter and vice versa.
Uh-huh.
There's a caveat here. Are you ready?
Of course, yeah.
If you don't like Ninja Turtles and if you don't like He-Man, stay the F away from this comic.
Yeah.
Because it is just seeped in lore and previous knowledge of these franchises. While I did enjoy myself reading it, it was kind of tough at times because I'm not completely all in on either of these franchises.
Mm-hmm.
But, Tim and Freddie did the Lord's work here and making sure that I stay entertained, and God damn it if they didn't do it. So yeah, that it's a great book, but it's not for me. That doesn't mean it's not for you.
Yeah.
It's a quality book.
I respect the positive review and seeing the good in it, even though it's not necessarily your cup of tea.
Yeah. And believe me, if this book was trash, I would have thoroughly trashed it. But I can't do that because the quality was there. Storytelling was great and the art was beautiful. It's just not my cup of tea.
When you introduce the concept of it, of like what, the joy in like bringing these things together as a child and being like, I'm going to create my own little fun here in my corner of the sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
Like that almost seems like a fun meta take on this is a story,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That kind of like how the Legos movie was like, oh, it turns out it's actually a guy like
right
playing with his Legos.
Or the Astrobot video game you just finished.
Yeah, right.
So it's a fun idea of mixing these worlds together, but if you're not fully invested in these characters, there's other things to read.
Okay.
You want me to finish off what else I read?
We can do a backsies, forthsies.
Let's do backseat forthsies. Let's teeter-totter this thing, my dude.
Okay, the first book I read was Violent Flowers by Maria Lovett. I really like Maria Lovett. Has a very unique art style and has been writing more comics recently. This is like pinnacle, like punk rock indie comic art. It just has that vibe to it that I'm like, yeah, this is for me.
Yeah.
This book is about vampires. It's a 1 of 4, but it's the first in the series of arcs. So this like is technically going to be an ongoing thread for Maria, which is very fun because a lot of the stuff she's done in the past has been very like, here's a short mini series, move on from it.
Mm-hmm.
The book's a bit horny, like all of Maria's work is.
Yes, I was going to say there's a theme. And vampires are naturally horny.
Yeah, aren't they?
Yeah. Lusty little fellas.
She does a lot with like youth and stolen innocence, I feel. And this feels a bit different because of the obvious immortality of it all that comes with vampires. And
Uh,
and for me as a Maria Lovett fan, it's just fun to come into this book and know what I can normally expect and then see something like so different while still
mhm.
being like of the family of things she's created. So there's that piece that I wanted to shout out, that it's like it feels like Maria Lovett, but it's like very different than some of the things that she's given us before. Um the point of this book, or what it's building towards. So we've got uh one of a family of vampires is where we start. Is
Okay.
is put into like a kind of Iron Maiden side type of thing and is thrown into the ocean. So she's kind of been
Oh.
like doomed to drown over and over and over again for the rest of eternity, right?
Ugh.
Because of being immortal.
Mhm.
Um, but we find a few centuries later that Iron Maiden thing has corroded
Mhm.
and she has made her way out. Um, Now her family of
And she is soggy.
the crew, the family of vampires, is dealing with like a murder amongst their ranks,
Mhm.
and we are left to potentially suspect that the escapee uh, has perpetrated this murder, right? Um, and there's potential to assume that this person has just been like driven mad by
Mhm.
like centuries at the bottom of the ocean, continually like dying and reviving over and over and over again. It's like
Yeah, I
a
mean, that would
very,
drive me fucking insane.
very gruesome imagery.
Yeah.
Um, but we don't get that confirmed by the end of the comic, so we're gonna see some comeuppance of that in the second issue, or get some answers to like the who and what of it, and maybe there's like more conspiring at play here that we're not aware of. But there is something about this book that feels like a little succession-y with vampires, with like the whole like legacy and history and
Oh, okay.
families
Yeah, yeah.
of it. That's like a really interesting piece. And then there's this like mystical queen hierarchy thing to it that is like a bit of like royal family drama. um
Mhm.
and then the very Maria Lovett kind of like loose romance and free love um piece of this, that like all mixed together to make this like a really interesting uh and diverse uh meal for your palate.
It is interesting that like the vampire lifestyle, like do you think that just like it means ultimate freedom because
Mhm.
you're just like you have conquered the ultimate thing, which is death itself. But even within those ranks, there is hierarchy and then there is order and rule. So like it is this weird interpretation of like no matter what kind of life you choose or that is chosen for you,
Mhm.
there's always some kind of ladder of importance. And like there's always an importance of where you fall on that can decide what if you matter and how much you matter.
Yeah. I
And
I
it,
th-
it's it's just kind of strange.
the more stuff like this that I'm exposed to, the more, and you can tell this like creatively because more people explore this aspect of it now, that the less interesting thing about vampires is the horror monster part,
Hmm.
and the like the drinking blood and killing of it all.
Yeah, that's like
And
old hat now. Just like okay, yeah, blood, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, what's interesting conceptually is that they are immortals who can invite or grant access
Hmm.
into immortality. It's just like a gift that they can give to anyone, but also a curse in that like you
Yeah,
think you want to live forever until you can.
yeah. I mean that's the monkey paw of it all. It's just like,
Mhm.
are you giving me a gift or a curse?
Yeah.
with this immortality.
Yeah.
And you know, I've
And I think
always
the killing piece of it is also it plays to a larger um point of seeing people as like things that like you're
Mhm.
dismissing um alongside immortality becomes viewing people who aren't immortal as just like passing fleeting things, right?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
kind of the attitude that the victims are like treated with.
And I think that just kind of plays into uh the allegory of like a class system.
Yeah.
Like rich people see poor people as like typically less than or not as important. And I think that plays well into vampires. Like the vampires are meant to be looked at as like the higher society, and us mortals they kind of tend to throw away and cast away because we're their food. Essentially, it's how we like maybe how we see cows and chickens.
Yeah.
Like we have no problem cooking them up and eating them. But I don't know. I've always wanted to see getting on like the vampire thing, and in the idea that all vampires are rich and wealthy. I've always wanted to see a book like Mitchell the Homeless Vampire, just like some vampire that's like just been poor for like centuries, just like I've been down on my luck. Like I
Yeah.
can't keep a job, didn't inherit any money. Like I'm just forever a tramp, just roaming the earth.
Uh-huh. Love it.
My book,
Maria love it.
Maria love it. Booyah. My book was The Missionary by Ryan Stegman and Jason Howard out on Distillery.
Yeah.
Did you read this book?
No.
It fucking ripped. It's so
Oh,
good.
okay. Great.
It was Ryan Stegman writing and Howard with the art, which was very, very cool and cryptic. It follows this gentleman who is a missionary. Well, he's not. He was a missionary. He's now married to his wife, who he catches giving a blowjob to the bishop of their church, and he
Scandalous.
in the church, I might add,
Oh,
and
in
as
God's
he's
house?
in God's home, and as he's running out, he is confronted by a demon, and the demon kind of it's you think it's gonna like start off as one book, right?
Yeah.
As comics do, uh, and it's like it gets very real of just like this demon kind of sees what this guy's life is and it's just like, whoa, shit, dude, like you got a lot going on, like this is kind of fucking brutal, and he kind of takes him under his wing of just like, let me show you how to talk to your wife and get some of your respect back, and like it's basically just like I Love You Man, the movie, just like this
Uh-huh.
schlub of a wet blanket and kind of like doormat of a guy, not really be friends, but like is taken on by this demon and like kind of gets some of his like courage back, I guess, and his self-respect. Um, all the while there is like a play for Earth between angels and demons. And so what's ultimately going to happen is this mortal and this demon are going to have to pair up together to save the earth from being destroyed.
Okay. One thing that I'm not picking up from your description,
Mhm.
what's the tone of this book? Is this like buddy cop kind of like fun?
Um, there's definitely humor, but it's
Yeah.
not like a knee slapper.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of gore.
Okay.
Um, and I think mostly what it's going to be is a journey in how to respect yourself, how to set boundaries with other people, and how to save the world from a demonic invasion.
Yeah, there's always
The
that
three
part.
virtues that we all live by.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like I don't think it's going to be like just a yuck 'em up monthly book that we're just going to be cackling over in between homeroom and gym. But there definitely is some very real interactions and conversations between these characters that is humorous. That Ryan Stegman knocked it out of the park with this writing. So I don't think it's going to be like tonally serious, but there is going to be some stuff I think later on in the series that's going to get a little too real. That's why there's like
Mm.
some little bits of comedy in there.
Right on.
But I'm all in. I loved it. I thought it was really,
All
really
right.
cool.
Very cool.
What,
Are we ready for book number 3?
yeah. Hell yeah.
We've got yet another first issue on the club today.
Folks, if you can believe it.
And this is something we used to pick out every week and do a special treatment for, and we stopped doing it a while ago. But I got to bring it back for this one because it was my clear pick of the week.
Pick of the week.
The Manchurian by Pornsak Pitchetchot and the Dodsons.
There was a lot of heat on social media about this book.
Was there really? That's great.
In the positive direction.
All right. I love to hear it. Pitchetchot wrote Infidel and The Good Asian, which were both like
phenomenal,
absolute bangers.
Gotcha. Like this fucking scorched earth. Those books were so fucking good.
I knew I recognized the name from somewhere, but I couldn't place it. And I looked it up and I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be good. All right. Here's like a really interesting thing about this that people may or may not be aware of yet.
Mm-hmm.
Because on its face or in pre-orders or whatever, this kind of just looked like the first issue of an ongoing series or something. When in reality, it is one of a series of one-shots that are called the Horizon Experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And 5 creative teams or 5 writers were given a challenge. And that challenge was to create a protagonist from a marginalized background set in a popular genre, wherein if you were to change the background of your protagonist, your story would holistically need to change.
Oh.
So this is something where you're like, let me give you some the examples for what each of the one-shots.
Okay.
So the Manchurian, the book that I read today, and the first in this series, is a Chinese James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
And what does, the UK of it all for James Bond is a huge part of this, right?
Right.
And
for Queen and Country.
And what does espionage mean to the Chinese versus to the UK? And what do the dynamics of those cultures and things mean for that? Like if you change him to an Irishman, it's holistically different. If you change it to, back to James Bond, holistically different. So you're just looking at like, marginalized people through these other pop culture lenses.
Right.
The second book will be a Muslim John Constantine.
Oh, okay. Hell yeah.
Third book is East African werewolves.
Ooh, hell yeah.
The fourth book is An Evil Dead for Black Nerds.
Okay, hell yeah.
And then the fifth book was just called A Reverse Indiana Jones. And what I'm assuming that means is a person of tribal descent is reclaiming treasures from imperialists.
Hell yes.
That's what I would think. And
I
that's
love
like, that one's like such a good example of when you change the background of the character, what does the story become?
Yeah. What publisher are these on?
These are all on Image.
Okay. Oh, dude, this sounds incredible.
And I'll say that the way the Manchurian ended, if it was a first issue of a series, I would buy like several more. And it kind of ended on like a little bit of like a cliffhanger of like how a normal first issue ends.
So is there any plans to continue these further? Or I think each individual one shot?
I think that they're doing it as like they said, the Horizon Experiment, as like an experiment right now, just to see like what are the reception to these things? Do they start a conversation? And if they sell really well, like maybe this becomes a series that each of these like one shots get revisited again, like one at a time, or maybe they break off into their own solo series, like who knows, but they need to sell enough of these the first time around. But they're all like great concepts.
Yeah, those all sound like
right.
So good.
The end of this one had the first like 6 or 7 pages of um, the second book, which is called The Sacred Damned, um, which features that kind of like Muslim John Constantine type character. Which again, he's somebody who's kind of like religious magic, Christian lore,
Mm-hmm.
uh, used as a superpower, going
Yeah.
back and forth between like heaven, hell, and the mortal world, and you change the religious background in that, and it
Mm-hmm.
holistically changes a lot about the character
Man, I'm
and
all in. That
their
sounds
mission in
incredible.
life and all that stuff. And yeah, the preview for that book was very cool. Again, sounded like another series that I would buy like several issues of. Um, but let's just focus on
Mm-hmm.
this
Yeah.
book, or bring our focus back to this book, which like the conversation we just had, like that already enough is enough for me to be like, yeah, I want to support this. Like that's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, so this book in particular um, makes a little bit of a commentary on China's values and their like economic power status, and the focus of this, James Bond is like going to kill the bad guy to rescue, you know, someone in royalty, like these like big English value superhero things. This is more like corporate espionage in like a tech and economy world to become like a global superpower.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and our James Bond type is more of like a facilitator or handler of other spies who are focused on being embedded in corporations and things like that. You
Yeah.
think about somebody who's got like the skill set to become like the CFO, or some big important piece of some like big Fortune 500 company.
Uh-huh.
They're focusing so much on those skills and the ins and outs of their jobs that like they need someone else to be like, now's the time to lay off, or like now's the time to recruit more people to the cause, or like,
Right.
hey, I got into I slipped up and I did this, that, or the other. Like, I need someone who's like a pro to take care of that for me. But you let me focus on, you know, being this one of the like thousands of small cogs that have like infiltrated uh America and all these like massive American companies where they're feeding secrets back to China and using them to become more of a global superpower and more of an economic superpower,
Huh.
uh, which I thought conceptually was just like very
Yeah.
interesting. There's a lot of these, there's a handful of like um, analogies throughout the book to like help contextualize for you like these sorts of differences in thinking about how espionage might work.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was that if you sent um, Russians, if you had Russian spies and their mission was to steal sand from a beach, they would get like, 2 or 3 of their bests and send them in at night, and they would sneak in and grab like a couple buckets of sand each. Whereas China would send thousands of people dressed as tourists, and once they came back and shook out their towels and
Uh-huh.
shook out their shoes and socks and beach clothes, they would have amassed so much more sand
Right.
than the Russians did, right?
Right.
And that kind of analogy was just like really interesting to me on like the POV of like what you're trying to accomplish, how you're trying to accomplish it, and how that changes the need for your like top special agents to be more like facilitators of these grander plays
Mm-hmm.
that are like more of a long game.
That sounds incredible.
It was a really cool comic. It was a really cool comic. And you see him like going and meeting like some of his counterparts and trying to reel this one person in and trying to push this other person further, and dealing with like the higher ups above him who are like, we need to take so and so off the board, and he's like, I'm not done with this yet, I can fix that. So the stakes feel like
Real.
really high and really intense, even though the analogy used to like present that seems like, oh, lower stakes because we've just got like a ton of people everywhere doing smaller things. Like, no, this one guy has like a really high stress job of like trying to live his life as like a normal American, or present himself as a normal American, while still doing like all this management of all these other people.
Dude, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. I'm so stoked on it. Sorry if I talk too long about it.
No, I love the book sounds awesome. The series that it's accompanying sounds absolutely enthralling.
Yeah.
And I want to check all those books out. So wow. Yeah. No wonder it's your pick of the week.
Heck yeah. Okay, and then did you read a third book? You just
I
read
did,
two.
yeah.
You did?
I got a third one, yeah.
All right, go for it.
Kind of along the same lines as like the heady, kind of really thought-provoking new idea. I read the Lobo Cancellation Special.
Sure, yeah.
It is by club favorite Kyle Starks and Kyle Hotz. This is a gigantic one-shot, and I've said this a million times before, but if you want to make a book fun and exciting and engrossing on a character that maybe a lot of people don't really know, put fucking Kyle Starks on the book, because it'll make it through the roof fun.
Yeah.
This is, I dare anyone out there to say that they're a Lobo expert, because there's no possible way. There's like just, there isn't like a Lobo stan out there, I don't really think, unless it's Kyle Starks, because he did a phenomenal job writing this book. Lobo, it follows Lobo as he's like stranded on this planet that's like a backwater farm planet with no real technology and no real resources to build any technology, so he's just kind of stuck there. But he just can't stop being Lobo, so he's like murdered at 90% of this planet, and so he's just like stuck with the last 10%, and they just fucking hate this guy, and they just berate him every day, and they're just like, like 20 years ago we were hit with a manure comet, and ever since you've gotten here, every day we pray to be hit with another manure comet, a comet, because you are so bad and just terrible for this planet that we just, every day we pray for death. And he's just like, I'm not that bad. Like give me a break. And they're just like, no, you really are that bad. You keep killing people and ruining our farmlands. You're terrible. Until finally one day, another alien race finds Lobo on this planet, and they want to hire him to facilitate a job that they need done. It's like a contract to find this alien race's king's daughter, who had been kidnapped by another alien who has like taken over the role as for Lobo, since he's like basically gone missing. Like people just assume that Lobo's dead now, and so there's like a real big power grab for the biggest dickhead in space. And so he has to go hunt down this guy called Murder Crotch Slaughterface. And like that just gives you the tone of what this book is.
Yeah.
And it's basically just like a lot of Lobo wax poeticking about how great Lobo is. There's a lot of mindless violence and crude humor. And I mean, it's like, it is a double issue of just like balls to the wall fun. And I mean, obviously it's for an elevated age group, so anyone over like 12 or 13 should be fine, because it's a DC comic, so there's no real cursing, but I mean, it's pretty violent, and there's like some more risque conversation that maybe the nerdy kids wouldn't like, but the cool kids that smoke cigarettes at recess will. So I fully endorse this book as being just fun and a great example of why Kyle Starks is good at what he does, whether it be humor or horror or sentimental or sci-fi. Like, he has proven that in any genre he excels. So this is no different. And if you are just even an inkling interested in who Lobo is and what he does, there is some like very fun backstory origin stuff here that gets retold in a interesting way that really isn't like retreading the tire, and it makes it fun to find out more about Lobo, and kind of makes you feel sorry for the guy a little bit at some points. But I mean, it's just great. It's a one shot, low investment, so go get it
Right
now.
on. Did you read it? Are you reading Superman at all?
No.
Okay. The House of Brainiac stuff recently, I had a lot of fun with, and Lobo and Superman team up
Oh, okay.
against
Nice.
Brainiac in that. So I've had some recent Lobo exposure.
How was he in
fun.
that series?
Good. I mean, like they kind of like teamed up, and then he double crossed him, and then they teamed up again at the end.
Yep.
This book introduced like a ton more of his species, which he at one point we thought he was the last of.
Yeah, supposedly he had killed everyone on the planet.
Yeah, right. And so it turns out there were, I don't know, what are they called, Zarnians or something like that.
Well, and from this book we find out that his people were peaceful. They were peaceful people. You think that like you see Lobo and you're like, oh, this was like a planet full of like complete lunatics, but like no, he was the lunatic. He just wanted to be the best and only one, so he killed everyone on the planet.
So yeah, in any case, they introduce a whole bunch of other Lobos.
Does he try to kill them?
Ton of other Lobos. For a little bit, tries to kill him, tries to team up with him, tries to kill him again, back and forth. Such is the way of Lobo.
What a dance.
He goes with the wind.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I thought this book was great.
All right, fun.
Yeah, a fun read.
All right. I read a book with a very fun title. That'll be our last book we're talking about this week. It's called Knights versus Samurai. It is out on Image Comic Books. It is written by David Desmalchian, who you may know from Count Crowley. He did like a Headless Horseman book with Dark Horse as well.
He's also in the Ant-Man movies.
Yeah, he's in a lot of movies, right? He was in Dune, Oppenheimer. He was the Polka Dot Man in Suicide Squad. This guy gets up to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, fingers in a lot of pots.
Todd McFarlane is listed as the creative director for this book. So he's got his fingers in it somehow. It has Todd's famous $2.99 price tag, which we love so much. I kind of assumed this was a Spawn tie-in because
of Todd McFarlane's involvement.
Just because it was that price, I was like, "Oh, $2.99 means it's like a Spawn thing if it's on Image. Otherwise, you never see comics that price." But I think just being of the Todd family of things that he's like helped facilitate or whatever,
being Todd adjacent,
that it gets lumped into that fun, affordable price range because that's like really important to him that these are accessible. So love that. Salute Todd. Another reason to salute you. In this comic, a newly knighted soldier is tasked with leading a ship to Devil's Island to slay some demons, so that God's word can be spread throughout the land. This is kind of like they keep trying to send missionaries there, and they keep getting just like slaughtered by these like demons.
I have an idea. Why don't you just let God speak for themselves? All right.
So I'll say this is a world with like sea creatures and dragons and stuff like that. Yeah. So when the book starts, you're led to believe that like, maybe there's demons on this island, but ultimately, as the title would lead you to believe, that we were run into samurais, and the way that they're dressed with like the kind of like red face masks of like the Oni and stuff like that they just kind of like present as demonic. Yeah. So again, it's kind of like this story of like spreading the kingdom, spreading God's goodwill, and there are things presenting like us coming with like arms wide open, and now we have to like battle and fight these people. Well, they're just people who are like defending their land from imperialists, right? Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting storyline so far. This book was very focused on the knight of it all. Like, it introduced you to this one character who was the knight. You see him slaying a dragon at the top of the book, along with his, like, I don't know if it's his twin brother or if it's his like brother in arms that he's always like been alongside, but his counterpart gets killed in the battle with the dragon. And so you build a lot of like empathy for this character. He comes back, he gets knighted. He's kind of like a sideshow to this like delusional duke or king that's like making a big deal about like, hey, it was me that got the slaying of the dragon going, and this guy kind of played a part in it, and we're honoring him tonight as like a little sideshow. And then you meet his wife, and he's given land for slaughtering this dragon, and then kind of put on this he's ready to start his life with her, and then he's kind of sent on this fool's errand to liberate this place from demons, and it turns out they're just men.
Yeah.
So, interesting book. I wish that during the first issue we would have gotten a little bit more of like the samurai side of this. The samurai are only introduced in the last panel of the last page. So you're kind of like, when you see a title like Knights versus Samurai, you're like, fuck
you expect a little more.
Let's do this damn thing. I think if it were called something a little more vague, that it would have been like a more fun reveal that like, oh, they're actually samurai and they were headed to like Devil's Island is like Japan.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I don't know. It was one of those things where I think the title seemed so fun and over the top that you're expecting something that like not as thoughtful. It's like the comic book was very like thoughtful and meditative on this character and did a lot of character building.
You're expecting a little like, more dumb.
Yeah, but you're expecting you're expecting a dumber book.
Yeah. How dare you? How dare you give us context in this book?
So I think it's one of those things that like if I think people will enjoy this if they go into it just knowing that it's not
there's more here.
It's not a B movie. Like the title makes you think it's like you're getting like Toxic Avengers but with like samurai and knights.
Yeah. Which I kind of I respect that, you know? Like the author is challenging us more than what we want. And I think ultimately it'll probably pay off. But like, I love how you read that title, you're just like, all right, time to turn my brain off. Right. But then it's like, oh, damn it. There are words here.
And again, $2.99 can't beat that.
Yeah.
Easy to give it a shot.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
That's it.
Dang. What a buffet of books.
Yeah. I'll say.
Well, I don't think there's anything left for us to say, Mike.
No.
I think we did the damn thing. If you want more of us, go to patreon.com/firstissueclub. If you want even more of us, go to the Discord or any of the social medias that we have. If you're over 21, get yourself a case of Space Camp or Cosmic IPA. Official beer of First Issue Club. Woo! Until then, see you later.
Ta-ta. First Issue Club podcast is brought to you by Boulevard Brewing Company, the people responsible for our favorite drinks, the Space Camper Cosmic IPA family of beers. Our show is edited and produced by our hosts Mike DeStacy, Greg Lichtig, and Andy Vargas. You can find us on social media at First Issue Club, and you can join the supporters who keep our humble podcast going on our Patreon at patreon.com/firstissueclub.